uh, are often using it, but nothing ever happens with that, and we are remaining with this. So it, as you can see, it turns out that some 700 times more expensive to use the roads in our country than, for example, in Austria or some much or some countries with much better economy. It was also an image that was shared a lot, and like I said, sort of replicate, sort of replace the story. This was an interesting example also. Uh, this was a story about a citizen of Ukraine that was blacklisted by the United States for corruption and Russian links. And in 2022, he has received citizenship of North Macedonia because he was into the horse riding sports, and all of a sudden this country decided to develop those sports, and the government gave him citizenship. It was a huge scandal here because the diplomats were also involved and were sort of outraged that this person was not checked before receiving the citizenship. In this image, we actually told his entire story about how his life was developing in the past 6 years. So first, he was indicted for money laundering in Ukraine. The very same year, he runs abroad, and Ukraine submits an international pursuit against him. Then he hides in Spain, but the Spanish found him and decided to return to Ukraine, but he runs to Germany. Then the Germans find him, but he applies there to remain. Then United States are blacklisting him for being involved in the interference in the elections in the USA. And then he decides to submit into 21 a request for Macedonian citizenship, and he is given the citizenship. Also, another story that was nearly completely told through a visual image like this. Of course, the article has a lot more data, but if somebody doesn't want to read, this is more. This is just enough to be informed on the subject. We were using data for many analyses mostly that we were doing, like for example, we were doing an analysis once about how long our government ministers are remaining in office, because frequent changes also often cause frequent changes of policies, so we don't have any continuity in policies in the government. And we reviewed the mandates of all the ministers in the past 30 years, and it turned out that only 13% of them have served for more than 3 years, and all the rest have served for less than 3 years, which is not enough time to create any policies. In the article, of course, we explained why this is important and everything, but this was also shared a lot to show the magnitude of the. We often use these charts also to show how much money this is for election also, how much money the state is pouring into the private television stations for political advertising of the political parties. This is one simple chart that shows that. I'll just now stop sharing this screen, and I would like to show you just another. I think I'll share another screen. Oh yes, here it is. So can you all see this?
Yes, we can.
Okay. This was also in the story about frequent changes in the ministries that we were doing. Here we're analyzing each ministry, as you can see it from this first one is the police, the last one is justice. Only in the mandate of the past government, which lasted for 7 years, then it was 6 years. Only in the mandate in the past government, there were often some government changes, one coalition party getting out, another coalition party getting in. So there was a frequent need for some other people to get ministers appointed. And as we saw, except for two ministries in that government that had a steady, sort of say, leadership in the entire mandate, that was the police and the economy. The others were frequently changed because new coalition parties were getting in order to maintain government stability, and so they would need to get a chair also. So this clearly showed that in many areas, the government doesn't really care about achieving any results or completing any programs that they have, any projects that they have, and are easily deciding to sacrifice all that just to please a new coalition member with a ministry position. That's what this this chart shows. Also was shared a lot. So 2/3 of the ministries had more than 3 ministers changing, which affects the work of the administration, the pace, and many other things. And just one more thing that I have prepared here. This was it. Yes. Just wait a minute. So a few years ago, we had a story where that we told completely through visualization. So can you see my screen share or my screen, or what are you seeing right now? Because I think I'm having
Nothing.
some connection.
Just you.
Yes, I think I have some connection problems once again. Yeah, this should be okay now. Yes, this is it. So we had a story that we completely, except for the title photograph, we used visualization to completely tell the story. This story is titled the armchair, which is a metaphor for a government position, is the best protection from prison. And so we are analyzing here how the judiciary, the prosecution, and the other institutions are treating government members throughout the 30 years compared to regular people. So as we can see now, this first chart shows that shows that these are criminal charges. When criminal charges are pressed, the prosecution denies 8 out of 100 criminal charges pressed, but inside those 8, we can often find government ministers, much more often than in these 92 here. This second chart is showing that throughout the history, we've had 186 government members. Half of them haven't had any criminal charges, while the other have had from the state or from the citizens, companies, or others, private charges. This is the total number of charges, 89. 41 is the ones that were pre-investigated. only for 20 there was indictment, only for 17 there was a court procedure. So you can see clearly how it declines as it goes further down the procedure, and the final chart is out of the all indictments. 8 were completely released, only 5 were found guilty, and only 2 out of 186 government members in one of the most corrupt countries in Europe have actually spent time behind bars. So this entire story, there's a lot of data here, was told throughout 4 visualizations, and it worked well. So what I would like to say now, just let me get out of this. What I would like to say now is what we do and what I would recommend. So when you can tell a story through visualization, then we should also try always to provide these visual solutions as an alternative. We know that there are many people that just don't read, don't have the patience to read. That's what the times are now. But those people also need and deserve to be informed on all issues. So this is a good solutions to provide a shortened but precise and so to say informative enough version of the story with these examples that I showed that people can use. And in our experience, we saw that people are very happy about sharing these visual solutions rather than sharing entire articles. And so we get a lot more reach through this and a lot more engagement through social media. However, we should only be aware of one of a few things. For example, this I'll go through to share just one more thing. This one. So, as you probably saw, we put the our media outlet, our website logo on just about every every chart, every visual solutions that we make because it's easily, we're spending time. This is not easy to do. I mean, sometimes it takes hours, sometimes it takes more than one person. So we make sure to put this because it's a very in a place where it cannot be easily cropped or removed. There are many solutions how to do this because these solutions are often just taken over by other media, republished and shared sometimes as their own. Of course, we are happy about being republished and shared by other media, but we're not at all happy when it's happening without us being attributed for what we did as it was our effort. So that's the only 2 things that I would like to point out. First, we should always try to visualize a story as much as possible and even make it an alternative story as an alternative storytelling tool, and also make sure that we get credit for what we do. I'm here for any questions or comments, of course.
I have a short question. Like, which tools did you use? Can you just name a few which tools use for either visualization or analysis?
We use PictoChart. We have subscription, so we use a paid version of PictoChart, which has a lot of options. It's simple to use. Everybody in the office is using it, so we don't have a special person to do it. Although it is a good idea to have, but sometimes it's easier because we, the journalists, are doing the stories and we have a better idea how to visualize those stories ourselves. Like I said, there are many tools. Some of them are free. Some of them require paid subscriptions. Everybody should use whatever they find most appropriate for them. It's much more important to remember how to visualize, to try to figure out visual solutions always when possible, and to make sure, because they spread a lot on social media, to make sure that we get the credit or the visibility through putting the logos or any other uh, appropriate solution that we can find.
Are there any more questions? If not, we can continue. No questions? Okay. Well, thank you, Gotze, for this presentation. We'll make sure to share some of these stories after the training with our grantees. And I would like to now continue with international trainer Jonathan Stoneman. As already mentioned in our correspondence, he worked for a long time for BBC, has a long career, and he also led run the services in Macedonian and Croatian language in the 90s. In the past decade, even more, he dedicated his time to trainings. And when we called him to hold a training for this project and for journalists from the Western Balkan countries, he was more than happy to transfer all his knowledge in data analysis and visualization to you. And Jonathan, I don't know if you are here, if you're ready to start.
Here, I'm here and I'm ready, Tara. Yeah.
Yeah. I also mentioned when I introduced you in the email that you also did a stand-up comedy to make training more accessible to everyone in a way.
Oh, so you've been Googling me. Well done. Yeah. I haven't advanced very much since those days, but all skills are welcome. Okay. So thanks for that unexpected introduction. So that I get an idea of who's out there, because I have just a lot of black screens. If you use the reaction button, put your thumb up if you have already used some data in stories you've done. Okay, but so that's 3-4 people maybe, maybe some other shy people. I'm going to go right back to basics, but if you decide it's too basic, when we get to the break, I can adapt what I'm doing. So I have a very, very short presentation just to set the scene, and then I'm going to be practical and offer some data to work with that we will look at together. And I've deliberately chosen data I don't think you will already know. So the important thing, the most important thing about data is that you think of it like doing an interview, because I recognize, and a lot of other trainers recognize, that we as journalists, we do know how to interview, even if data is something new. And if you think of data as just a source, and what you're going to do, what we're going to do is ask it questions. It's like a very, how shall I say, one-dimensional source who only answers kind of yes or no questions, or can give quantities and that sort of thing. But it can be very useful, but it's much more useful for us to think of it as something that we can ask questions of. And there are certain types of question which are particularly good for data. We as journalists often want to find, and in some of Gotze's examples there, we're finding the biggest, the top, sometimes the best, if we can decide what makes it the best, the most expensive. We are, in all these cases, we are sorting data from top to bottom, highest to lowest, cheapest to most expensive, whatever, but we're sorting it. And that's a very typical question we would use even if we weren't asking a data source. We leave out things that we're not interested in. So particular years, particular countries, particular categories of spending or voting or whatever, we filter out, or we, if you like, we filter in only what we want to know. So that's two processes. And the third process, and there really are only three processes we need to think about as data journalists. We may add things up, maybe even add in more data. So we sometimes summarize, we often summarize, we sometimes combine, and we use pivot tables, which is something I'm going to show you if you haven't already got accustomed to them in this session, to look at data and get a much clearer idea very quickly of what's in there. So that is the end of that presentation. So now I'm going to move to some actual data, which I hope you can see. Now, this data is available in the chat. If you want to join me on this document, it's now in the chat. Please make sure that you go to File and make a copy. Otherwise, you'll be possibly editing the same one that I'm working on, which will get very confusing. So I can see people are joining. I can see these avatars at the top. So please go to File and then make a copy. Or if you prefer, you can download it. But I'm going to be using just this Google Sheets here. Now, if you don't already know this data, this is based on this website. I can give you the address. I'll give you the address now. The Americans keep a record of every cent of federal money that they spend everywhere in the world, everywhere in the States. So you can go down to location here. You don't have to do this now because I've already done it, but we have place of performance, but also recipient location. So where are the people receiving the money located? And you can select many, many foreign countries, dozens of them. Probably, I should think, everything that's in the UN list of countries. So I've already been and done this and collected together some Albanian contracts, some Serbian and some Bosnian contracts. And they're all in this one big data set. And so we're going to ask it some questions. And then later on, tomorrow, we'll actually visualize some of them, some of the answers. The first thing I want to do is to find out how much is in here. So if I click at the top of column A, any column, it tells me count 1147, 1147, 1,147 items. I can compare that just if I click on another one like here, and I switch that to count. I just want to make sure that they're all 1147 because that's how many rows have got data in. This is actually quite a small data set, less than 1,200 rows. Each row, of course, is one record. So it's some kind of information about contracts with the selected countries. If we go to the top of the page, we can see, so it has a unique key in column A, some other contract award, unique key, award ID. We don't need all this, but we're getting an idea of what's in here. Any modifications, how many times they've changed the contract. Transaction number seems to be a lot of zeros. We may not be interested in that. Then the parent awarding agency by number, but here is the, in column G, we have the parent awarding agency name. So we see State Department, mostly State Department, Agency for International Development, some are not applicable, NA or not available. We can have a look down there. So we're getting an idea of what's in here. This is one contract in column J, Federal Action Obligation, and then in K, total dollars obligated. So how much money is this contract worth? When was it action taken? When does it end? So we can see how long the contract is. The funding agency, Department of State in many cases, but not only. Then they have sub-agency if it's anything else, but usually it seems to be the same agency. And then what's interesting for me is recipient name. Who's receiving this? Recipient name doing business, it's NA, so it doesn't, they haven't completed that. There's some addresses, parent company names. So there's quite a lot of data here we could make use of. And so my first question was to the data was, what's in here? How much? 1,200 or 1,147 items. But I can also say, well, let's just look at, let's do some filtering and see if I go across to the recipient country, I can use a filter. So if I go to data, create a filter, all these columns now have a little symbol, sort of filter symbol at the top. So I could say, right, under recipient country, if I click on that, first of all, there are only 3 countries in there. As you see, Albania, BiH, and Serbia. So let's just look at Albania only. So if I click on, if I select Albania only, now all the column Y is Albania. If I click at the top again, you see we now have 168. So of the 1,147, there's just 168 Albanian contracts. We've also got recipient parent name. I could look down here and say, okay, who's in here? Let's just see if there's anybody who gets a lot of money. Let's just take Albanian Motor Company. Okay, and we see that now there's only 3 contracts. And if I click on column K, it says, well, there are 4. What call, one of them is the header. So there are 3 contracts, and the total is $233,168.91. And it's the Department of State is spending something with the Albanian Motor Company. So that was just a little bit of filtering. Take Albania first and then look at the particular company. That could get kind of boring very quickly. I'm going to remove the filter so all the data is now visible again. Because I find that for journalists in a hurry, and that includes me, there's a much quicker way to look at this data and to make sense of it much quicker. And that is to do a pivot table. So I'm going to insert pivot table, put it on a new sheet. It tells me what it's going to do. It says I'm taking these and I'm taking from A1 to Y1147, which is correct. Now we get a blank table and we can now do with it whatever we want. In the sense that we can now design it, we can ask the questions that we are interested in. So, for example, I would say in these 3 countries, what's the company receiving the most American federal funding? So I'm going to take recipient name and put that in the rows. So I now get a list of every company that's in there. And now I'll just take the total dollars obligated and put that in the values. So the values is whatever it is you want to count or add up. So in this case, I just want to see how many dollars. And I'm going to choose descending. And I want it to sort by the sum of the total dollars. And I'll make this a bit wider so that we can see what's going on. Make that a little bit wider so we can see how many dollars are involved. Oops, sorry, make it a bit narrow there. Right, so this, let's make it easy to read by putting some commas in there. They're not pounds, they're dollars. So this Institute za Razvoj Mladih Kult or Culturi is $31 million. Forget the pound sign. I would need to change that. So $31 million going to the Institute za Rozvoj Mladých Kult, ITBM LLC 12 million. Vina Statische Osigurania Belgrade 5.7 million. So let's say we want to find out a bit more about this, and this is where we find this is where pivot tables are so helpful. Let's say that we want let's take Institute za Rozvoj Mladých. If I double click on that 31.2 million, so I'm saying to my screen, where does that number come from? So if I double click now, just a moment, it's now shown me, it's automatically made me a new sheet. It says Detail Institute za Rozvoj Mladých. Here are the individual numbers, and we can see the spread of dates and who's giving the money, International Agency for International Development. It's not much more detail here about what those contracts are, but we could find out by asking somebody. Looks like they gave 17 cents back there. Something like 200 million there, but that's NA. Okay, so here's my pivot table again. So I found out who's getting the most money in all of the 3 countries that I'm dealing with here. But let's change the question. This is how quickly you can find out what's going on. So recipient name we get rid of, and we'll say the recipient country name and put that in the rows. Sort that descending by the sum, and we see that it's Serbia, Bosnia, then Albania. And if we wanted, we could very quickly do a very basic graph by going Insert and then Chart, and then it'll make me the chart. And we can see, we don't want the grand total, by the way, so we'll say, if I go back to my pivot table, it's made half of it is the grand total. Well, that's a stupid way of doing it. So if I go back a step, oops, I need this back again. Get rid of the total like that by unticking there, and it's now corrected it. So now we can see it's much easier to see Serbia 44%, Bosnia 43%, and Albania 11% of the money that's coming from Washington. Or we could go another step and say, well, hang on a minute, let's look at the parent awarding agency and put that in the columns. I'm going to get rid of this. This is not suitable anymore. I'm going to just get rid of my chart. So by putting the columns there, I can see that the recipient, let's just make that more visible. We've got Serbia, Bosnia, Albania, and we've got Agency for International Development, Department of Defense, NA, not applicable, and State Department. And again, I don't want the totals there. It's quite hard to read, particularly because this is making a rather wide column. So if I just bring that back there. So this is already giving us an answer to which country is getting the most money from where. But I could make it easy to read. So I could take the parent award agency and put it above the country. And now that's a bit easier. So we can see that international development is only dealing with Bosnia and Serbia. Defense is Serbia, a little bit of Bosnia. NA, so not available, quite a lot. It's dealing with all 3. And the State Department is dealing with all 3. So again, if we say, oh, well, what's the State Department spending in Bosnia? I don't have to go back to my original data. I can double click on that number, and this will be whatever makes up that total. So that's all Department of State, and it's all the contracts. How many are there? Click on column A, 62 different contracts. So we can ask questions really quite quickly, particularly using pivot tables, and dragging, just taking the name of the column we're interested in and putting it either as a row or as a column or both. And then whatever you want to add up or count, you put in the values. So here I've said, tell me the total dollars obligated. So it's added up everything, the total dollars obligated. And in a way, it's as simple as that. That gives me something I can work with. And when it's in a pivot table, I can make a chart, not a very beautifully designed one, nothing as good as the sort of picture chart range. But here, this is the totals. So not really liking that. So I'm going to change the chart type. So first of all, I'm going to move to its own sheet. It always comes as a preview, but I move it to its own sheet. Then we can really work with it. So edit the chart, switch it from being a pie chart, and let's make it one of these. It's a little easier to read, but not great, because it's, I'm not liking the fact that it isn't. I want to see more detail of which is which department, and that's not very clear here. So if I go back to the pivot table, I can get my editing tool, and let's say I'm going to just, let's take the parent, the parent award agency goes in the columns, and now that chart will have changed, and we'll see, ooh, that's now a little, it does show you the huge difference between 350,000 and that's just plain wrong. It's adding it all up wrong. So it's not doing a great job today. Pivot table, that number is, the chart is the wrong length. That should be much longer, and the 4.7 million should be much larger, but it's not doing that. Something strange is happening here. So at this point, are there any questions either in your language through the interpreter, or in I can't read Albanian very well, but you could put questions in the chat, or you could say them with your microphone and get them translated. Is there anything you want me to go back to and do again?
Is there any step that you want it to be repeated?
Was this all new or new-ish?
I think you can go ahead.
Okay, it does look like there are no questions, but
If anyone wants something to be repeated, please raise your hand and we will repeat it, or just be slower.
yeah.
We have one question here. Can you please tell us for which period the data you are showing are related to?
Well,
What is the way we can introduce that in a chart, the period and time?
okay, good question. So first of all, we've got these two things here: action date, action date and period of performance current end date. So we've got the dates in there. So it's from, let's have a look at what the range is. So again, if I put the filter on, so we get those there, we can have a look at the years. Actually, there's just lots of dates there. So one of the things, I'll show you a trick. I'm going to create a new column, and I'm going to call this action year. So, and I'm just going to ask it equals year from M2. And it's going to give me, well, it hasn't done it correctly yet. It doesn't, it's misinterpreting that. So I need to tell it to stop doing that for a moment. That should be just a number. So first of all, I have to go here and tell it that this data is hang on a moment, is formatted as a date. So if I go into number and tell it that that is a date, and now if I run year and tell it that that is just a number, and we don't need it to have, it's only a year, so we don't need it to have any decimal places. So we reduce those. There we are. Let's put a comma in, but never mind. If I now go here and double click here, we will see, if I just check, yep, although it's put commas in as if they were proper thousands, there are years ranging from 2020 to 2024. And I need to stop. If I look in that column L, we can see it says equals year M8. So that's what's actually in that column, and it's showing us a year, which I've taken from column M. But now I need to just get rid of that by copying and then paste the values only. So now all these are just numbers. I can also get rid of the comma, I think. Can't remember how to do that in this number format. Just put in plain number. That's it's really being annoying, right? But this now means if I make a pivot table, I can ask it which year each of these contracts were. So we've made a new piece of data. We've pulled out one part, which is the whole date, and we've said, right, give me the year. If I make a new pivot table, we should find I've got action year. So we can say, okay, action year in the rows, and total dollars obligated in the values, which is going to add up. And then let's just put in the recipient country in the columns. And we take out the totals. We don't want totals. So now it's showing how much was happening contractually in each of the years. I chose those years simply when I went to this website at the beginning a couple of days ago. I chose just the last 4 years by going here. And you can make your own data, and then ultimately you download what you've created. So I'll go back here. Now I could insert a chart, and we see, actually, let's just change the design a moment and get rid of that. I'm going to say I want the years, I want the countries to be where the years are, so I need to just get rid of that. Start again. Start a different chart. So I'll put the country name there and the action year there. Now, if I insert the chart and change it to a bar chart, column chart, that's better. So it's now showing us the differences. So that's what was happening in the different countries in the different years. So Albania didn't get much in the way of contracts in 2021. Bosnia and Serbia are pretty much equal, but then Bosnia has been ahead, slightly ahead, and then in the year so far, the action year, so these are brand new contracts this year. It seems to be that Serbia has done a bit better. So we can play around, we can ask more questions and enhance it. And I need to show you also that some of this data is what we call dirty. It's not perfect. One of the reasons I haven't started with the kind of call out data that you might be dealing with where you are is that the data you get back, and we will come to this in the second session, the data you get back is very clean. And I wanted to show you what dirty data is. I've got 5 minutes till the break, so I'm going to show you the beginnings of why this data is dirty. And I'm going to use a tool called OpenRefine, which has got this little, if you can see my screen, it's got a little diamond. A diamond is there because the whole idea of OpenRefine cleaning is that you are polishing your data. You have a rough diamond and you're now polishing it. It takes a few moments. It's going to open a new tab in my browser, which takes, when I'm on Zoom, takes a few minutes or a few seconds, I should say. It's coming, but slowly. While I'm waiting, any more questions so far?
I don't see any questions in chat.
At the moment, you see a blank, hopefully you see a blank screen, right?
Yes.
With my mouse moving around. That's okay. It's just, it does take a long time when it's on Zoom. I'm going to show you this tool. At the end, I'll show you how to get it if you want a copy. It's free, and because I'm a freelance, everything I do is either cheap or free. And here we go. It's just about to open up. So it uses my browser to talk to the program, but I wouldn't need to be on the internet. It's not actually the data is on my computer, and my computer is looking at the data without any need to be on the internet itself. It's just using a browser as a way of speaking to or interacting with the data. So I'm going to go to, no, I'm going to open a new project. So choose files. I have to just go to select the file that I've been working on. Just a moment, I know where it is. Here we go, this is the one. So I'm just selecting in the way that you will with any data set. I find it, I then click next to open it. Now this opens a preview. And it just shows me what I'm going to get. If there's any mistakes, I can correct them. But at the moment, no, it's pretty much the same data. I can do some corrections to it. Interestingly, it's not doing anything to the original data. It hasn't opened that file. Strange. It's very difficult to imagine this. I find it difficult. The data set has not been opened. It's being looked at by OpenRefine, and it's a separate entity now. It's going, when I do things to it, nothing is happening to the original file until I send the file back to myself. I'm going to export it at the end of the process. So there are a couple of things I want to do. Here it looks a little bit like a spreadsheet, but it isn't. It's not a spreadsheet. It's a way of looking at the data. If we go across to these dates, it has correctly read them as dates, although it's added on some times. The dollars are correct. It's read those as numbers. That's a date. And then let's just have a look at what I mean by dirty. So if I look at recipient name, I click on that and do a thing called facet. So this is continuing with OpenRefine's idea that everything is like a diamond. A diamond has several facets or faces. We're looking at one. We're looking at this column, and I'm going to do it as a text facet. First thing it does, it tells me how many different names there are in that column, 195. That's not particularly interesting yet because I need to do this thing called cluster. And the first thing is, nope, there's nothing wrong in there. I'm going to do a new one. Nope, what is going on? Why is that recipient name? Right, so there is an example. So DH, these are two different entries, DH International Belgrade, DOO, and DHL International, oh, sorry, they are different. Because, so metaphone means to do with how it sounds. It begins with the same words. So OpenRefine is saying, could that be the same entry? Well, no, because one of them is Sarajevo and one's Belgrade. But let's come out of that a moment and go to this one, the next column. Same deal. It's cluster, because I know there is some dirtiness here. Aha, here we go. Right, so there's a perfect example. So that one has got, that says Logosoft, but it's in quotation marks. I can just see the quotation. That one is no quotation marks. So 4 times it's in one format, 3 times it's in another, but the computer reads that as 2 different things. So if I click on the top one, it says, okay, it's going to be, we're just going to use the one without, we're going to get rid of the extra quote marks. Same here, Via Media, and without quotes, let's go for that. Gradievina Glue DOO. That's whether it's got dots after D and the O. I'm going to go for that one. This is I'm editing the data, but I'm not editing the original data. I'm just making it clearer, less dirty. Boram Marketing DO Sarajevo. Boram, again, they're using the quote mark. So these are, people are typing in these names, and some of them are putting quotes, and some are putting without quotes. And we're saying, okay, ignore the quotes. So now that's going to make all these look the same. Autotechnique, Bogoscha, again, lack of quotes. So now I can merge. And now we move to a different algorithm. It has 6 different ways of analyzing what might be mistakes. There's my Sarajevo, and oh, those are both Sarajevo. And that one's got a quote. That one doesn't have a quote. So let's be consistent, get rid of the quote, merge, go to the next one. Metaphone we already looked at, and I think it's going to be, that's the problem. And ProSound, one is the Starigrad, Belgrade office, the other one is just ProSound. Now, it could be no importance. At the moment, I might not do anything with that, but I might make a note that it could be 2 different offices, or they have 2 different contracts with different parts of the same company. Cologne Phonetic. You see, that's, you can imagine that that slightly sounds the same. S-E-S-C, Sesid. It's a stretch, but that's a little bit similar. I don't think it's the same. Next one. Right, we're back to the problem of Sarajevo and Belgrade. That one's the same again, because I didn't correct anything, so it's just offering me the same options. Bida Morse. This is the final one, no problems at all, so I'm going to close it. And over here, it's told me it's done mass edit 69 cells and then 4 cells. So we've changed 73 cells in a few seconds by looking at these incorrectly typed names. Can do the same sort of thing. Here's the parent name. I can go back to my controller. Recipient name, raw, facet, text facet. It's cluster. Yeah, there you are. There's the same kind of problems, and it will mean that when we try to do a pivot table, for example, Generali Osigurania Serbia, and the one with dots and without dots, it reads those. There are 55 rows there. There's probably quite a lot of money involved, and it's reading it as 2 different rows. So that's clearly wrong. That one in Albania has got a dot where it shouldn't have. Krajovina Glu has got dots where it shouldn't have again. So these, we could correct all these. This is what OpenRefine is for. And we'll take a break now. There's a 10-minute break in the schedule. When we come back, I'll show you a little bit more with OpenRefine and go back and we'll look at some call-out data and start trying to analyze that. If you think of any questions during the break, just type them in the chat or be ready to ask them when we come back. Carla, anything to add? 10 minutes, correct?
No, yeah, we can continue with 10-minute break, and as Jonathan said, later on we will go more into callouts, which most of you will do throughout your projects. Yeah, we can start with a 10-minute break. Let's be back at 3 o'clock. Yeah.
Vashi.
Perfect. Much.
Okay.
Thank you. Hi, we can restart. I don't see
Perfect. Yeah.
any questions arise from
No.
this break. But yeah, if there are any, please, as I said, we can stop, we can repeat, and you can post in chat whatever you need.
Yes. If anybody does want to go to the American site that I mentioned, I'll just put I find it a really interesting one. I use it a lot, not just for training, and there are stories in here. The USA spending, it's called, and I put it in the chat. And just to make sure, I'll share my screen again so that we know. So what I'm talking about is that, and so that's what I did was I did all those years. You can go back a long way. You can go to location. There's place of performance and recipient location. So where is the company receiving the money? Where is the work being done? I remember after the Iraq War, it suddenly became clear that although the Americans were spending billions of dollars, as they called it, rebuilding the Iraqi economy, many billions were being spent in the US. So the place of performance can be interesting because they may be doing the work, the aid or whatever, inside the United States. But for me, I want to see the location, and I would then go choose what Albania is nice and high up the list. So Albania, and then you have to go to there and add filter, and you go back and you choose Serbia and so on, and add another filter. Let's just put I'll put Bosnia in because it's higher up the list. So if I do that, we can see in the summary, when I submit the search, it's going to look at 24, 23, 22, 21, 20, Albania and Bosnia and Herzegovina. And there you can see it looks like this, but there's only 233 results at the moment. So Serbia is a lot of them. And here's a sort of preview of all the stuff we're going to get. And then we click on download and we receive it that way. If you're interested in the tool I was using before the break, OpenRefine, I'm going to put the details in the of that in the chat, or rather the link for that in the chat. It's very well documented. I'm not sure that there's a Serbian or Albanian or Croatian translation, but if you can read English, their user manual is very good. And from the downloads, I obviously get the Windows one, but you can have Mac and Linux as well. And it's all free, and it's well documented, and it does many, many useful things. Now, I'm just checking there are no questions. Okay, so let us go to a different data set, and I'll share this as well. This one was provided to me by Carla, and as an example, just one example of some callouts. This was complications in labor, and I'll just wait for it to open up completely, then I can share it with you, or share it back to you because it was yours in the first place. You may think, well, why did I go with a much more complicated data set first? Because actually, with the other one, the American one, I could ask it quite complex questions. So hopefully, anyone with a link, same deal as before. I'm now giving you, I haven't yet done it, the link. Please make a copy if you want to follow what I'm doing. The file, make a copy. Just wait a moment, see if other people join me. So for me, the procedure, if you like, for opening any data I've not seen before is to have a quick look. The first thing is, what have I got? How much have I got? So if I click on column A, it tells me, well, it's added all the numbers up, but if I say how many, 524. Okay, so there's 523, 524 answers in there. If I switch on, just make sure that the filter applies everywhere. So filter, create a filter. If I click on the filter, it's a quick way of seeing what countries are in here. So Albania, Bihar, Croatia, Greece, Hungary, Kosovo, Montenegro, North Macedonia, other, Romania, Serbia. Okay, so that information might be useful. Are you and it's either going to be family member, friend, or mother. Where does the mother live? Either city, town, or village. What type of complication? So I'm looking at what other child or children died, children died, I nearly died, children died, mother died. See, this is a very, if you like, professional way of getting answers you need, in the sense that there are just the right number of categories. You're not letting people just write anything, but you're actually giving a category for them to select, which makes your life much easier. If you're designing a call out, you should think like this. You should think, how are they going to answer this? If I asked a general question like, what type of complication did the mother experience? And I made it a free text answer. Firstly, I get it in multiple languages. Secondly, I would get spelling mistakes. I would get, some people would write their life story. Other person might write, I nearly died. Other person might write, I nearly died, but I got better after 2 years in hospital, or whatever. So you would have all sorts of different categories, and you would spend a long time cleaning it up. Here, whoever made this has got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, I think 12 categories. That's all. I mean, 12 sounds a lot, but that's all there is. Did the mother have any pre-existing conditions? That's probably no or yes. No, yes, don't know. That's all you need. And it means they're ticking a box, which makes your life easier when you look at the data. Again, did the delivery involve a C-section? No, yes, yes. So different categories: failed induction, scheduled, emergency. That's it. Three yeses, 3 different types of yes. Was the cause of the complications medical negligence? Yes or no? That's all. And again, give them the choice, so that you can put yes or no in English, or you can put tick or cross. But you're not going to get if you had it in Albanian and say Serbian, so then you'd have people possibly doing it with Cyrillic or not Cyrillic. So you could have da, ne, po, and yo, and 2 different spellings of da and ne. Plus all the times when people misspell, perhaps they put da with 2 A's by mistake with a typing error. So by giving them the limited possibilities, you make your life a lot easier. Do you want to be notified when you publish our story? Well, that's for us, not for the readers of the final article. Would you like to be contacted by our reporters? Again, here's an opportunity to say, well, let's just look at the yeses, see how many of them wanted to be contacted by our reporters. So we had 6 people who are willing to tell their stories. But that's just using a filter to find what you want, which is the people who say yes, they want to be contacted by Bern. So this is a very, in many ways, very simple type of call out. It's got nearly all is very objective data. There's no opinions other than, do you think it's medical negligence? I'm sure the hospitals will say no, and the families will say yes, and then that's not the issue. But everything else is very, you just quantify it. How many people from Serbia, how many from Bosnia, and so on. So as before, the first thing I'm looking at here is to think, well, what kind of questions could I ask? But at the same time, I'm conscious that there are only about 500 responses. So in the context of the population of the countries involved, 500 responses is tiny. For a call out, it's pretty good, but in terms of some kind of statistical analysis of what's been going wrong in hospitals around the region, it's not enough. But as long as you remember that, and as you remember your sample is actually not very big, that's okay. You can't draw any statistical conclusions from this, but that's not what the call out is for. But what we could do, for example, is I would make a pivot table like this. Let's see if it's going to give me, that pivot table is broken. So, oh no, there's the edit. So I'm going to say in the rows, what country of residence, and then I'm going to use the index in the values, which means I'm going to count, except it's going to add them up because they're just numbers. I'm going to say count and sort by count descending. So then we can see that Serbia is the dominant country here, and Bosnia-Herzegovina only 97. So just by sorting them, that's quickly told me what countries are represented in here and how much they're represented. So that's one thing I could ask. Then I could say, well, okay, was a lawsuit or complaint filed? Now I'm going to put that in this thing here called filters. And at the moment, that doesn't do anything different. But now I can say under conditions, if I clear it and say, I only want to look at how many were filed. So was a lawsuit or complaint filed? In Serbia, it was 7, Bosnia 3. So we're only looking at a sample of 16 out of 500 and something responses where there was a lawsuit or complaint filed. But using this filter system is really very useful, quick way of changing the shape of your data very quickly to ask it suitable questions. So, for example, I'm going to do this, put the country residence in the filters, but I'm going to have a what type of complication did the mother experience, and put that in the rows, and then make that wider so we can read it. So again, we can make that descending and sort by count. So other. So although we have all these children nearly died, I nearly died, etc., actually 253 were other. So we would need to contact them and find out what happened. We could also say, where does the mother live? That could become a column. So we can see this now. There's a problem here. Look, city, town, and city, town. What is the problem here? There's a slight problem, although it's not capital letters. It's probably an issue with a space, either before or after the city or at the end of town. So we're going to have to clean that because that's making two categories which are actually the same. So that's a simple piece of cleaning. Let's come back here. And what I do is I will filter just city, town. And I don't care which, they both say city, town, but there's something slightly wrong. So all I'm going to do is drag that so that it copies the correct one version of city, town. Oops, sorry. Just copy it all the way down until we get to the bottom of the pile. There we are. if I go back to the pivot table and refresh my data, let's just refresh it. There we are. It's only got one column for city town now. Hold on. Just refreshing the whole page. So now that's correct. I've got, whatever was wrong before, I've corrected it. So we can see, is there a difference between villages and city/town? Not too bad. I mean, it's not obvious. It varies a little bit. But now I could say, if I go to edit and look at my, well, I put the filters, I'll put the country there. So I can say, okay, let's look at that now for only, let's say, Bosnia, Croatia, Montenegro, and Serbia. So that's reduced all of it. So we're only looking at the former Yugoslav groups. Oh, I left out North Macedonia, sorry. There we are. One more. So that's just adapted everything. Where does the mother live? Sitting there. So we can see a little bit that, again, other is very dominant. Children nearly died. So again, as with my American data, I can say, okay, I want to look at the village ones of child nearly died. If I double click on the 9, it makes a list for me, and I can see that the C-section was involved half the time. Again, the problem with this is that it's a really clean, I mean, there's no problem in the sense it's a very clean data set, but it's relatively small. So I am going to be able to talk about case studies, case histories, and what happened. I shouldn't draw big conclusions about how good or bad health services are in, say, in rural areas or in urban areas. But it is good to do these to get some feeling of how many people are willing to talk about it, and to get a little feeling of how much this is happening. I mean, it might be that you have a country or a regional authority that's saying this is not a problem, and yet you have hundreds of people saying it's a problem. So it's a very valid way of getting people's real stories for your journalism. But as I say, I would use this to enhance other data. For example, we can get data from the World Bank, look at health data and development data for the World Bank. In fact, I did do that. I'll just get a copy of it and we'll have a quick look. Just need to upload a file from my computer. While I'm doing that, are there any questions?
Does anyone have any question related to this call out data analysis? Okay.
Thanks. Okay.
I'll just share attendance sheet in the chat.
Okay.
Once again, so please sign in.
So what I did was I went, in preparation for this session, I went to the World Bank. I'll show you the site in a moment. This is it's not quite finished yet. It's not sure. So maternal mortality. So numbers of deaths per 1,000 live births. This is mothers dying in childbirth, and it was various years, 2000 through to 2020. Not quite all the years. There's a big gap in their data. So we can see that if we're looking at the data, this is why I want this, because if I look at the this one, and let's just say what kind of complication I want to say text contains
Mas definições não tem. Não vai à busca das definições. Das todas das definições. Estranho. Estou dizendo a ver?
Sorry, we have a question?
Agora?
sorry, Clara, I didn't hear enough of that to know, and my
Yeah, I think you
language
can
is so
continue.
rusty.
Yeah,
Okay,
sorry.
that's
I
okay.
think it was a mistake.
That's okay. So here's one where actually what I could do is I can use this filter. It's clear. Let's get rid of this filter, and I'll do that extra audio made me think I was going to stop doing something, but let me just do this again. If I go to data, create a filter, and look at this, if I take out the word, I say text does not contain, I want the word nearly. So if I take out the word nearly, it's only going to be died, and I can take out other as well. And let's look at the country residence being Albania. Let's take Bosnia as well. So there we've got, oh, there were no died. I took out the word nearly. What kind of complication? Didn't get any deaths there at all. But by looking at this one, we can see that although for everybody, that first year, 2000, seems to have been particularly bad because all the numbers are very high in 2000, and then the next year of the sample was 2014, and the numbers are much lower for everything. And I took just as comparison, so we have Albania, Bosnia, Croatia, Kosovo, North Macedonia, Serbia, but then the Euro area as a measure of just a comparison. We've also got the entire European Union, high income countries defined by the World Bank, low middle, low middle, upper middle, and the entire world. So in 2000, it was 339 maternal deaths per 1,000 live births. That's a lot. It's dropped down to 223. But Albania, for example, Serbia was actually the worst, but even Serbia is well inside the high income numbers. So it's better result than in the high income countries of the UN. So you can get this sort of data to work with and to get your comparisons from data.worldbank.org. I'll put that in the chat. And you can look at the various, either you can concentrate on a country or you can go for an indicator. I put in the word mortality, and you can download their data for free, and it's free to use. So if I put in mortality, so we have various, there's all these mortality rate infant, even infant male, infant female per 1,000 live births, female per 1,000 female adults, sorry, not per 1,000 births. So mortality rate adult female per 1,000, neonatal per 1,000 live births. So there's lots of options there in the World Bank data. If your English is good for reading and research, there's a very good website called Our World in Data. And if I put that here, I just want to show you there. This feels like a little digression, but if I put Yeah, sorry, in the search. Sorry. Here, I'll put mortality because I just want to see which mortalities they've got. Child mortality rate. So they've done a chart which is ready produced for us. You can choose some countries yourself, but what's really useful with these guys is you can download. First of all, they show you where they got it from, which is a website called Child Mortality. You've got comparisons here, but at the bottom, you can download your own copy of the data that they've used here. So you can either download the picture or the data. So I'm going to get that one. And child more. There we go. I'm not going to get that one. And then we'll be talking in detail tomorrow about how you could visualize things. This is an interesting way of doing it. So you're looking at, and we're talking in much more detail about these kinds of charts. So this is GDP per capita in dollars across the bottom. So the rich countries are on the right, and on the left, on the y-axis, we've got child mortality rate. So we can see which country has the lowest, so highest child mortality is Democratic Republic of Congo, and its GDP is very low. Equatorial Guinea has a better GDP, but still has a high infant mortality rate. So we could also we could take Europe on its own to see that Europe is all grouped. Sorry about this animation, I can't stop it. It's all grouped down the bottom, which is good. It wants to be low rate of mortality and decent GDP per capita. So the worst performing is Moldova in both senses. Albania is pretty bad, but the child mortality rate is 0.9%. So not one single percent. I find this website is really, really helpful when doing that sort of work where you want to put some kind of context on it. So not only are you getting your stories from mothers who've had complicated births, even from families of mothers who died, but you can put it in context of World Bank and other details. I think it's really important to be able to put some kind of context on it. So even if it seems that Albania or Bosnia or Serbia has bad rate, it's not quite as bad as it could be. This is the deaths per 1,000 people, per 1,000 women. It's not that bad. Although I really noticed that 2000 was terrible, and 2014, in nearly all cases, was about half, which suggests that something strange is going on, possibly change of category, reorganization in the statistics profession. It's rare for things to all change so much in one go. I should say I'm not a statistician. I'm a journalist, and I've just learned a lot about statistics in the last 10 years. You don't have to remain a humanities graduate or just a pure journalist all your life. You can learn quite a lot about statistics without really being a full expert in it. Okay, are there any questions? Either about this kind of data, cleaning data, or pivot tables and what we've shown so far?
I have a question.
Yeah, please.
It's maybe a little bit out of the blue, but I had an issue where I had a data set of 50,000+ rows. And my computer was crashing actually in trying to open that. So is there any way how to get around huge Excel spreadsheets?
Well, Yes, there is. Firstly, 50,000 shouldn't crash your computer. Were you using Google Sheets or Excel?
I tried both. Basically, it didn't allow me to open to open it via installed app.
Mhm.
So I tried online, and then after some time, I managed to open it online on Google Spreadsheet.
Okay, because Google Spreadsheet is the slightly more limited one. So, I mean, 50,000 is usually okay with Google. It makes me wonder if maybe your processor or something, there's a problem with your computer, because it shouldn't crash that easily for 50,000. I mean, I would tend, mine would crash when I get beyond about 500,000. But it might be that mine's a younger computer. But the other way to do it is to use a program like either R or Python, which is opening the data without really opening the data. So it's kind of, it's not going to take all the data in one go. It sort of gives you a preview of it, and it allows you. I mean, with 50,000, you're never going to want to see all the data. You might want to summarize it, but you're not going to want to read it all in one screen. So other programs recognize this and don't try to load it all in one onto one screen in one go. So I tend, yeah, as I say, I don't, my computer slows down beyond about 500,000 rows, but I mean, I was doing some training last week where I needed 300,000 rows, and it took about 4 seconds to open it. So it might be worth learning something called R and RStudio. If you send your via email to Carla after this, I can send you some links and some also links to how to get help on that, because it might not be your computer. It might just be the data itself might be slightly corrupted. The other thing is, even if it's only 50,000 rows, depends how many columns there are.
There was quite a few.
Aha.
Quite a few, yeah. I think it was 15 columns.
Oh, 15. 15 is okay. I mean, Excel won't, it gets very difficult if it's more than 255 columns. I can't remember. There is a reason why it's 255 and not 256 or 250. After 255 columns, it gets very awkward. But 15 should be okay. But just stick with what works. So if it opens in Google Sheets, then stick with that. If you keep getting stuck, then via Carla, get my details and I'll try and sort it out. Thanks for the question. Any more? Thanks, Evan. I'll make a note of that.
So maybe I have a question for all trainees present. Usually, I've been working a lot with engaged citizen reporting, and we are collecting this data from the callouts. And like when you download all the data, all of a sudden you have like thousands of answers. So what would be your suggestions? Where do you start from? Do you make a couple of leads aside? Maybe this is connected more to tomorrow, where we're gonna talk more about stories and how to get stories from data, but maybe we can shortly introduce like how to get into that, because it can be intimidating when you see like all of a sudden so many information at one spot.
Well, let me go back a step. It's exactly the same. When I said it's like interviewing a person, it's exactly the same also as interviewing a person that you've never met before. So if, for example, I met Carla and she, maybe my editor says, oh, Carla's in your office for an interview. And I don't know Carla. I don't have very little idea what we could talk about. So I need to do a little bit of asking of, what can she tell me? But if I've invited Carla for an interview because I want to talk about the work of Bern and about call outs and about the training program and so on, then I already have some, theory. She's going to answer some questions I need to ask. So there's exactly the same happens with data. Either you get data that's just there, like you found it on the internet, or you've found, Jonathan said, go and get some World Bank data, and you found some. And now you can sort of look at it, but you're not quite sure what you're looking for because it came to you. That's sort of, it's sitting in your office and you can ask it questions. Or you can have a theory. You can say, I think that country X, let's not say which one, let's say country X has the worst healthcare for pregnant women in the Western Balkans. So I have a theory, and I want to now find if I can get the data that's going to prove that theory true or false. So I'm now looking at the data in a different way, with an intent. When you have these call-out results, you will have, you've asked a certain, there is a pattern to the kind of call-outs you have to do. So you already have a kind of theory that our country or this part of the region has a particular problem, a social problem, health problem, whatever, justice problem. So you want people's stories and you want to show what's going on in some detail. So you already have, if you like, a hypothesis or a theory that you're trying to prove. And then all the questions, that is the same as saying, I need to interview somebody from company X because I think they are, they're going to go bust, or they have a big problem, or they are emitting more CO2 than any other company in my town. I'm asking them for an interview for a specific reason. Whereas if the CEO of the company walks into my office and says, interview me, I haven't a clue what I'm going to ask him or her until I've done a little bit of chat and say, oh, what are you here for? What are your interests? Why are you? Then I start to build up an idea of what I could talk to them about. So it's another reason why I'm very happy to compare data with a person. You talk to data in exactly the same way that you might talk to human beings.
Okay, thank you. Do we have more questions related to today's lesson? Can you share maybe, are there also some other tools that exist that we didn't mention today related to data analysis? We mentioned OpenRefine for refining data, and then we also went through analysis through spreadsheets, but are there any more tools that you can use? I know most of you might be familiar also that you can use like Python, but this can be more advanced tool. Can you mention if there are any more ways that you can use?
I would actually say, I don't want to disappoint you, but no, in the sense that I like to keep it as relatively simple, because you are asking, however complicated the questions, you can use free tools like Google Sheets. Yes, you can use Python, but you have to learn enough. Python and R are worth learning if you're going to ask complicated questions. If you're going to ask simple or simple-ish questions like we've been doing, I wouldn't go for any more tools. One of the problems with some of the tools that are available that promise to do data analysis for you is you can't see what they're doing. They are what they call a black box, where you say, give me this, and it will give you that. For example, if I just share my screen again for a couple of minutes, if I go back, there's a lot being said about AI, about artificial intelligence. If I go to the pivot table, and then click on edit. You see, automatically it's given me 3 options here. These are the so-called suggested. Sum of deaths per 1,000, sum of deaths per 1,000 for each country code by year, sum of deaths per 1,000 for each country code by year. That's the same thing. If I do that, it'll do the work for me in one go, just like that. Although it's added in the totals, which I didn't want. So AI is already a free tool that's in Google Sheets. And yet I still need to decide what are the questions I really want to ask. I don't want to be driven by AI guessing that I might want to ask this question. It's going to take me down a certain path that might not be the one I originally wanted to go down. So I would stick with the simple tools until you've shown that you need something else. And even there, you can do a lot. I mean, what I say is complicated now is not particularly complicated in statistical or data terms. It's just slightly more complicated questions, like bringing 2 data sets together. So combining the call out results with the maternal mortality data. You could do that by joining the data together on the name of the country, and then have just a wider table that shows you the call out results and gives you the context of what happened in the various years. But that's not using more tools, that's just using more processes. And the great thing is, with most of the processes, let's say, if you know what you want to do, you can ask Google or YouTube how to do it. And you can say, I want to use Excel, I want to use Google Sheets. And you will find tutorials for just about any problem that you can ever imagine, and not spend any money. I mean, I spend very little money on software. So I either use stuff that's free or I use what I've already got. I mean, we will talk about visualization tools tomorrow, but that's a slightly different question. Okay, are there any, it looks like we might end 5 minutes early, or a little bit more, 15 minutes early. Are there any other questions now?
I think we are good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Tomorrow we'll look at both the principles of visualization and the practicalities, and talk a little bit more about what your data can show and how it can tell stories. If anybody listening has particular examples of stuff that they've done that they'd like to share, or stuff they want to do, data they've got and they're not sure what to do with, or even just questions that you haven't yet managed to answer, please bring those kind of problems, and we can go through those. We can make good use of the time. I've got a certain amount of material already prepared, but as you see, some of it depends on having questions from the audience. So do come with good and bad examples. If you see something and you wish you'd done it, you could ask me how to do it. But we'll also look at the principles behind what works and what doesn't work in visualization.
I think we have one example now that's going to be shared of how visualization was made by one of our grantees, Focus from Sarajevo. But if any of you want to have like also share examples, or like have if you have any questions of how to make your own story out of the material you have currently, or you have some idea how to make something, you can always come up and share it with us throughout the training. If there are no more questions, maybe we can continue with focus. And I would like to thank you for today's training, Jonathan, and see you tomorrow.
Okay.
Yeah.
I hope it was useful. Please
It was
come.
very useful. Thank you.
Good. Please come with questions tomorrow. Okay, I should leave then, or you're going to move on to focus?
Yeah, we're gonna move on.
Okay.
And thank you.
Okay.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Priятно, миру павшим, etc. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Vesna, you're here, I see.
Tu sam.
Ćao, čao. Možeš i naš pričat, nema problema.
Ok, to sam i mislila. Hoću li šerat ovaj link ili ćete vi?
Možete šerat?
Šeram, samo sekundu.
Vjerojatno je vam pri ruci.
Evo ga, samo da vidim ili ga vidite.
Da, vidimo.
Superiška, ništa, ja ću ovako. Dobar dan, ja sam Vesna, ja sam u projektnom timu, trenutno nam novinara nema, oni su na zadacima, imaju neke druge obaveze, ali svejedno, sve vrijeme sam uključena u cijelu priču. Ono što ćemo mi vama ukratko predstaviti, nećemo oduzimati vaše dragocjeno vrijeme, odnosi se na naš... Pa mi smo u ovome našem, ovo je zapravo scrollytelling u kojoj smo podijelili neke podatke u momentu kad su bili vrlo interesantni. Naš novinar je bio na terenu i izvukao određene podatke u institucijama Bosne i Hercegovine da se služi raznovrsna hrana, koliko to zapravo košta novca, kakva je to vrsta hrana, piće, koliko je to alkohola, koliko je to nekih morskih plodova i to, a poznavajući situaciju u Bosni i Hercegovini i generalno na stopu siromaštva naše zemlje, vrlo interesantna je bila tema. Međutim, pošto smo mi jedan mali medij koji se u zadnje vrijeme okrenuo prema multimedijalnom sadržaju, zadržavanju naših čitalaca, osvježavanju našeg autorskog sadržaja, u posljednje vrijeme bavimo se storytellingom i scrollytellingom. Jedan vid tih novih formata jeste i ovaj scrollytelling koji sam vam ja sada podijelila s vama. Međutim, obzirom da imamo male novčane te resurse kojima smo mogli da se igramo, poigravamo i upravimo, mi smo prionuli na jedan besplatni alat koji se zove Shorthand. On je bio besplatan i vrlo je jednostavan za korištenje, u smislu da vi možete imati drag and drop, sučeljavanje, ubacite svoje, apsolutno možete sve da vi pravite onako kako hoćete, od fonta, pozadine, ubacivanje, ovo sve naše su fotografije, naši su tekstovi i dalje vidite dole built with shorthand na kraju, naravno ni taj dio nismo željeli sakriti, jednostavno čisto da budemo transparentni. Alat je, ova generalna platforma je vrlo prilagodljiva nama, ne opterećava naš server, dijelili smo link kroz i društvene mreže i ja vam mogu reći baš za ovu priču, na Facebook link je imao doseg od 149.743 korisnika, ukupan engagement je bio 279.997, link na story direktno koji su skidali bilo je oko 8.000 čitalaca, imali smo preko 2.000 reakcija i negdje oko 800 komentara. Tako da smatramo da jednom ovim alatom, malim koji je, kažem, moj besplatan, pokušali smo doći do što većeg broja nekih naših čitalaca koji razumiju generalno o čemu se ovdje radi, kakav je to bezobrazluk dalje i bliže. Tako da ono što mogu reći, u svakom slučaju za nas za početak, Shorthand smo uzimali besplatnu verziju, naravno imate i nadogradnje, ima kupovne na mjesečnom nivou, ima i za biznise, ima i za sve, ali mi nismo, jednostavno krenuli smo samo sa ovim. Napravili smo još jedan sličan ovome, ali on se ticao, sad ću vam također i taj podijeliti, neću vas više oduzimati vaše vrijeme, ali evo sad ću pokušati samo sekundicu da ovdje mi sad malo jedan koji smo pričali o sukobu interesa, odnosno ljudima koje smo, sad ću ga ja pokušati ovdje otvoriti. Sam sekundicu. Neću da, evo ćete sad. Također shorthand, ovdje smo radili, koje se u kantonu Sarajevo natjerao da podnese ostavku. Ovdje smo koristili ovaj format gdje smo stavljali to kad je razriješen funkcije, ko je kada bio gdje sa njihovim fotografijama, jer poznata naravno ovo ličnosti u Bosni i Hercegovini. Naravno ovdje smo stavljali i unutarnje linkove da ako žele pročitati tekst, i to ovdje smo stavili koliko je kažnjeno, koliko je falsifikata, šta je to, i ovdje smo ostavili link gdje oni mogu pročitati kompletan tekst, naravno oba scrollitellinga prati tekst. Eto, to je s naše strane ukratko.
Ima li nekih pitanja vezano za ovaj primjer? Nema nikakvih pitanja. Što se tiče ovih linkova što smo danas imali tokom treninga i ovih toolova što smo predstavili, mi ćemo sve to šerati s vama naknadno u e-mailu, tako da ne morate se brinuti, i ove linkove što su svi spomenuti, evo, šerat ćemo. Za one koji još nisu, ja sam šerala isto ove attendance sheet za danas. Sutra se opet nalazimo u 1:30. We are meeting again tomorrow at 1:30, and we're gonna work more on the visualization of this data that you analyze throughout callouts or throughout any form. And I think Vesna, you made a brief introduction to this topic. So tomorrow we're gonna definitely continue more on that and how to make your own stories more, let's say, nicer and more readable for your audience. Because as you know, today, I don't think anyone reads. I think they just look at the photos and scroll. So that's going to be something to look forward to tomorrow, and hope to see you, all of you, again tomorrow at 1:30. Okay, if there are no more questions, we can wrap up this training. Thank you for joining once again. And yes, as I already said, all this mentioned will be shared with you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
See you. Bye-bye.